Do you ever get confused about how to use different types of gelatin in a recipe?
Well, today on WTF, we're going to help you resolve the confusion over conversion. Hello and welcome to WTF, where we transform food here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen. I'm Chef Scott Janie.
And I'm Janie Wang, one of the owners of Modernist Pantry. And here on WTF, every week we cover unique ingredients, techniques, and show you recipes for your kitchen. So remember to subscribe and stick around for our weekly giveaway. This week, Scott and I are covering the topic of how do you convert different types of gelatin. And it's a really challenging topic because, as you can see, we have a lot of different types of gelatin here, and each one works just a little bit differently. So we're going to stray a little bit from our usually kind of conversational format. So we're going to talk about gelatin, but then we're going to dive into the questions so we can be as clear as possible. So if you have a specific question, look at the chapters below, and you can just skip ahead to that if that's what you want to know. All right. Scott, I think where we can start today is maybe going over all the different types of gelatin that we have available so that people can kind of have a sense of, what we'll be referring to for the rest of this episode.
Sure. So we have two powdered types of gelatin. We have fish and beef. Then we have 5 different types of sheet gelatin, ranging from platinum, gold, silver, bronze, and titanium. And then Instagel, which is a very special type of gelatin. And all these gelatins are made from animal products, so they are actual gelatin. We're not venturing into any other realm, just gelatin today.
All right. And in our kitchen, we typically prefer to use the sheet gelatin. Can you talk a little bit about, why that is?
Sheet gelatin's easy to use because you can bloom it in the sheets. You can count the sheets. A lot of recipes are measured by the sheet, and they don't clump as much as, let's say, the powder does, especially if you just add the powder directly in. So they're super easy to bloom. I've even seen people bloom an entire package of it and then pull it out of the refrigerator when they need it. They can still count it once it's cool and just literally bloomed in water. So it's really easy to use the sheet gelatin. The other ones are easy, but this is definitely the best way.
Yeah, and bloom is often kind of one of the biggest differences between different types of gelatin, really. Can you talk a little bit about bloom? Here we have our titanium, it's 120, we go all the way up to 250 bloom. What exactly does that mean?
So the difference in bloom equals the difference in strength. It's also referred to as bloom strength. The lower the strength, the softer and the difference in color that you're going to get. The higher, you're going to get less impurities and you're getting a stronger gel overall. So each grade is a little bit stronger than the last.
Yeah, and we can kind of see just visually here, we have all these different types of gelatin and different levels of clarity. Can you talk about what is the relationship between bloom and clarity?
So bloom and clarity is done by a different scale, which is the titanium, bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Those are the clarity that you're going to get. So the highest is going to be platinum, which is going to give you the least amount of color and the best ability to see through it. Whereas titanium, you do get a slight yellowing, but it's still a good gelatin if you're trying to do something that you don't really have to worry about that coloring. So each one's going to be used for different purposes. The most common one that people will have ever seen, if they've ever seen sheet gelatin, is silver.
Okay, and I think let's dive right into our questions right now. And the first one that I want to start with is, we get a lot of questions from people who are looking at a recipe, and the recipe says use 3 sheets of gelatin. How do they know which sheet to use?
So the best thing to do is assume that they're using silver. But a great thing about sheet gelatin is that each one of these is measured to match with the other. So even if they use sheet gelatin when that person was developing their recipe, you can replace those 3 sheets with 3 sheets of gold, 3 sheets of platinum, 3 sheets of titanium, and bronze. I'll just say all of them, but they are interchangeable by sheet. So that makes it extremely easy. And the reason that happens is these 2 sheets, which you can see, weigh very different amounts. The platinum weighs 1.75 grams per sheet, that's roughly. whereas the titanium weighs about 5. And that's where we're talking about bloom, is this is a lesser strength, so we need more of it. And that's why these are two measured to gel the exact same way. And all these gels here are done by the exact same amount of sheets, and we have extremely similar gels with all of them.
But definitely very different colors.
Yes.
All right. And the next question that people get is, the most common way that people come across gelatin is they found a packet of powdered gelatin in the grocery store, but they want to try something else. How do they convert powdered gelatin to sheet gelatin?
So there's a great rule of thumb, and everyone can use it, because recipes, like we talked about before, come in 3 different ways. It's either going to say X amount of sheets, X amount of grams, or sometimes tablespoons of gelatin. And then it's also going to say packets. And that's a very difficult one, because you must assume that someone has used that packet of gelatin. So 1 packet of gelatin equals 1 tablespoon of powdered gelatin, or 3 sheets of sheet gelatin. That's the best way. That is the easiest way to convert a sheet to the powder, or the powder to a sheet. They go both ways. So.
I guess the follow-up question that would be, if you can't use the grocery store powdered gelatin, which is porcine, as most of the perfected gels are, and the Instagel, but they want to use perhaps a beef gelatin or a fish gelatin because of dietary restrictions or simply preference, how do they convert a packet of the store-bought gelatin to a different type of powdered gelatin?
So that's a good question, because we don't know the bloom, or generally we don't know the bloom of like a packet of gelatin that we get from the store. But in a little bit of research, we were able to find that it's a silver grade in around 225 bloom. So you can do a 1-to-1 replacement with either the fish or the beef, but it may be just a little bit more firm if you're using the fish or the beef, because they're around a 250 bloom. So you can do, we'll just say about 1% less than that. But if you wanted to just not have to worry about it, you can do a 1-to-1 replacement. Just know it might be slightly firmer of a gel.
Right. And that definitely leads me to my next question. I think maybe the most confusing question in this particular series, which is, I have a recipe. It calls for, let's say, silver at 180 bloom, or 190 bloom. But all I have in my kitchen is platinum, which is 250 bloom. How do I convert that in order to use the right amount of gelatin?
So in this case, if you have a recipe that's asking for a specific bloom, you can convert it, but it's a little bit difficult because there's no math equation or percentage that works exactly. So we developed this chart that's on screen now, so you can look and you can find what number you have or what number you need. So let's say you needed 10 grams of silver 160 bloom gelatin, but all you have is platinum 230 bloom. You go over to the highlighted the 10, and then find your platinum to the right of it, which is 8.6 grams. So instead of using the 10 grams, you're going to use 8.6 grams. And the reason why we have 10 as the base number, so that you can then convert it to 1, and then let's say your recipe asks for 25, you can just multiply it up to that 25. So it's really easy to use that way.
Well, that's really great to know. And if you do want to see this in more detail, you can get this entire chart in the links in the description below. It is available on our blog. Now, I think the next question, and this is going back to the powder gelatin, is what is the melting temperature of different types of powder gelatin, and how does that affect usage?
That's a great question. It affects all different types of gelatin. So generally, if you're going to be with the beef, the pork, even the Instagel, around 97 degrees Fahrenheit, around 100, so between there. I always say body temperature, so when you eat it, it melts immediately. The only one that's different is fish gelatin, which melts around 77 degrees Fahrenheit. So it melts at a much lower temperature, so you can get a great, flavor release, which is something that we deal with here, is when that gel melts, you get more flavor out of it. So if it melts at a lower temperature, you get a big pop of, let's just say it's strawberry jello, right? You get that big pop of strawberry because it's already melted and it's already released its flavor. So Fish will melt at 77, the rest of them between 97 and 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, and speaking of temperature, so one of the unique products that we carry here is the Instagel, which is the only cold setting gelatin available, which means that you don't have to heat it up in order to use it. However, its usage is different from a standard gelatin. If someone has a recipe that calls for a standard gelatin, but they want to convert it into Instagel for that cold setting benefit, how much Instagel do they use?
So Instagel is very easy to use. We'll just start with that really quickly. It basically blends into a cold liquid and then can create a gel, which is not something you can do with the rest of these. So that's what does set it apart. Just wanted to hammer that down because that's very important. Generally, it's twice the amount. That's a good rule of thumb. It's always going to be twice the amount of Instagel to the weight of whatever it is that you're making. So whatever the powdered weighs, double it. So if it's 2 grams, 4 grams. That's a good rule of thumb if you're converting powdered gelatin to Instagel. It's a little bit different if you're converting sheet gelatin. For every sheet of gelatin that has been soaked in water, you're going to use 4 grams of Instagel dissolved in 6 times its weight in water. So that's 24 grams of water and 4 grams of Instagel. And that works for every sheet of gelatin from titanium to platinum.
Okay, so take your powder, multiply by 2, and then multiply that by 6 in order to get the amount of water.
Yes.
Okay, again, don't write this down. This will all be up on the blog. I think that pretty much covers most of the questions that we have. I do want to, of course, go over this week's recipe real quick because it's a really tasty one, and hopefully you're excited to work with gelatin. This week's giveaway is going to be 3 gelatins of your choice from our entire catalog here. And in order to enter to win, just leave in the comments below something that you've come across in the recipe that you found really confusing or just doesn't make sense, or you're not sure like why sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. You know, let us know what you would like us to cover on a future episode of WTF that's going to make your cooking life a lot easier. All right, and let's talk about this panna cotta because it looks very, very different. What exactly are in these tasty looking little jars?
So the panna cotta is great because it's a layered different, panna cotta. The bottom and the third layer are basically just coffee gel. And it uses the platinum, so it's nice and clear. And then we have so we have the coffee gel, and then we have a mascarpone gel. And they're mascarpone, milk, a little bit of egg, some sugar, so really wonderful. And then we have our own chocolate sauce and then a truffle on top. And the recipe has a slightly different cookie, but we threw on some severati, which are traditional with tiramisu. So did I not say it was tiramisu?
We did not say it was tiramisu.
It's tiramisu. So all the flavors of a tiramisu done as a panna cotta and put in these beautiful little jars. So fun little dessert.
Yeah, I don't have a fork to eat this with, but that's okay because I've had it plenty of times before. But this is really delicious. It's kind of like deconstructed, a little unexpected.
Deconstructed, reconstructed.
Yeah, but pretty easy to make, I think, and it really kind of shows off. I don't know, this is like a really fun thing that you can make ahead of time. So you can, of course, get this recipe in the links in the description below as well. All right, hopefully what we were able to do today is make it a little bit more clear. How do you use different types of gelatin? How do you substitute different types of gelatin? And of course, give you a fun new recipe to play around with. If you have any questions about gelatin, just leave that in the comments below as well. We'll be happy to answer them. And until next week, from here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen, I'm Janie Wang.
And I'm Scott Guerin.